بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I start with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the unconditionally loving, the unconditionally compassionate, and may the best of peace and blessings be upon the final Prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was sent as a mercy to all mankind. And may the best of peace and blessings be upon all other prophets as well. Dear beloved brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are with a new companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu. Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas is a cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Al-Abbas, his father, is the uncle of Rasulullah. Almost every Muslim with little knowledge about the companions of Rasulullah heard of his name, Abdullah bin Abbas. And that's why many Muslims think that he is one of the senior companions. I mean by senior in age. But in fact, he was born 10 years after the commission of Rasulullah, after Bi'thah. When Rasulullah was commissioned to be a prophet after receiving the first revelation, 10 years after that he was born. And the moment he was born, his mother said, do not feed him. First thing, take him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number one is let him be sent to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how they were planning for their children, how they were bringing up their children. Number one, attach them to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Attach them to the one who guides them to Allah. Attach yourself to those people. So in their time was Rasulullah. Send him to Rasulullah first. And when they took him to Rasulullah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did tahniq to him. Tahniq means Rasulullah take a date and chew it and put it slightly on the lips and the tongue of the baby. So the first thing that goes inside him was the honorable saliva of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how his parents, how the companions of Rasulullah in general were caring about their children. Attach them to Rasulullah. Make Rasulullah in their life from even the first moment, once they are born, not when they are mature. We start to teach them the love of Allah and Rasulullah the moment they are born, because their parents before them got that love and that iman deep in their hearts. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud, when he became 7 years old, he attached himself, he accompanied Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was with Rasulullah almost all the time. 7 years old only. Nowadays he is in grade 1. One of the mistakes that we do today is that we call them small. We call them young. You are still young. You are still small. But they used to call them fata. Fata comes from futuwa, which means nobility and bravery. Since they are very young, they implant in their minds that you are noble, you are brave, you are magnanimous, you can do it. They call them fata, but we call them small. And that's why we leave them playing until they reach the age of 18, for example, nowadays, when they are supposed to take responsibility for themselves, they are not ready. And then we question them, why you cannot take responsibility? Because we did not teach them when we are supposed to teach them that manners, how to take responsibilities, how to live life, how to behave. When we are supposed to teach them, we did not. When we are supposed to attach them to those people, to the ulama who are able to guide them and connect them to Allah and build their personality and make them successful human beings in this life and in the akhirah, we did not do that. But the companions of Rasulullah did. That's why they became the best ummah. Nowadays, we care the most about their food, drink, and clothes. If we care, what are the food that they eat? What are the clothes that they clothe? How they sleep? Any food that is halal, any nice clothes does the job. But the issue is, are we building their mentality, their mind, their hearts, their iman? Are we implanting the love of Rasulullah and the love of Allah in their hearts deep, not by the tongue, by practice, by making Rasulullah and the ulama in our time their qudwah, their example to follow, or we just leave them to the social media? I remember in the old days, if someone misbehaves, people around him will say, this person is brought up by the street, because at home his parents did not refine his manners, did not do tarbiyah for him. He was just playing with people in the street. And the behavior and the manners that he gets from the street will follow. So if someone misbehaves, people used to call him, this is raised by the street, not by parents. Because parents are supposed to guide their children to Allah. This is responsibility that every parent will be asked about. But nowadays, unfortunately, we don't leave our children to streets. At street, children find like 5, 10, 20, no more than 50 children to play with. But on social media now, millions. We give handphones and tabs and iPads to children and go to the millions of the internet even without, observing them. This is a disaster in bringing up children. The companions of Rasulullah, the moment their children are born, took care of them. When he was 7, he was attached to Rasulullah. He accompanied Rasulullah until Rasulullah passed away, and that was a period of 6 years. And Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas, when Rasulullah passed away, he was only 13 years old. Only 13 years old. And nowadays, one day I had a speech and I said, 13 years old, if we don't give them the handphone or the iPad, they cry. And the moderator said, if we don't give them ice cream, they cry. Why? Because ice cream is almost one of the most important things to them. That's why they cry. Human beings cry when they feel they are powerless. They can't do anything. Something is very important they want to do. They are powerless. So they cry. They cry for ice cream because this is the most important to them. Imagine what can such a young man, I don't like to call them children or child, of this young man, what kind of production he or she will produce in the future if they cry for an ice cream when they are 13. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas was with Rasulullah ﷺ, and one day he noticed that Rasulullah wanted to have wudu. He immediately prepared water for Rasulullah ﷺ. And having Rasulullah finished his wudu, he pointed to Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas to stand next to him to pray together with Rasulullah. Sayyidina Abdullah came, but he didn't stand next to Rasulullah. He stood behind him. When Rasulullah finished, he asked him, why you stood behind me while I pointed to you to stand next to me? He said, Ya Rasulullah, in my view, you are way more honorable than someone like me to stand next to you. Who am I? This is the meaning. Who am I? I'm just a boy, and you are Rasulullah, the best human being that Allah created ever. Who am I to stand next to you? No, you are honoring me if you allow me to stand behind you. Who taught him that? Where did he get that knowledge, that love, that iman, that understanding? When we attach our children, when we attach ourselves to great people, they will be great. When we attach our children to ungreat people, they will be the same. The environment that our children are brought up in, they will be the like. So we need to care about the environment and the people that our children and ourselves are attached to. Because al-mar'u ala dini khalilih, every human being will behave in the same way of his friends, his close friends, and his environment, the people around him. How they behave, the people that you love, how they behave, you will behave the same, in the same way. That's why we need to care about the people in our environment. We need to make sure that people around us, the people that we are attached to, are close to Allah. They will bring us with them to Allah. When Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas told Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, I'm honorable if I stand behind you. Who am I to stand next to you? Rasulullah noticed the wisdom, noticed the understanding, and he made dua to him. And he said, Allahumma atihi al-hikmah. Ya Allah, grant him wisdom. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Who is ever granted wisdom, he has been granted abundance of good, abundance of khair. And sufficient for Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud, that dua. That dua helped him in his life and also in the akhirah. Sometimes when you are attached to noble people, to the warathatul anbiya, to the heirs of prophets, the ulama that guides us to Allah. Ulama in Arabic is plural, in Malay is singular, so sometimes I use them interchangeably. So ulama guide us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some moments will benefit us for all our life, in the dunya and also in the coming life in the akhirah. We need to attach ourselves to those people because they will guide us to Rasulullah and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas, he got this dua, and we will see the result and the wisdom that he got. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas remained with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam till the end of his life, of the life of Rasulullah. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam departed this dunya, he didn't say, okay, that's the end. I did my part. Now that's it. No, because he missed 17 years. 10 years he was not born yet, and 7 years he was young until he accompanied Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he has 17 years that he need to compensate that he missed with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he started to accompany the senior companions who were with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he said, whenever I hear one of the companions of Rasulullah, he has a hadith or he has ayah or he has knowledge that I don't have, I go to his house. I stand outside. I don't knock the door. I just sit next to his house waiting for him to come out. Maybe it becomes very hot in the desert. Maybe it rains. Maybe the wind blows and the sand and dust fills up his clothes and his hair. He said, I never move. Whatever happens until the companion of Rasulullah comes out that I am seeking knowledge from. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 2 hours, maybe half a day. He said, I remain there waiting until he comes out. When he comes out, he sees me in that situation and he says, what happened to you? Why you do that to yourself? He said, I come because I want to seek knowledge from you. I have a question to ask you. He said, why you come to me? Send me someone and I will come to you. You belong to Rasulullah. You are one of the family of Rasulullah. Imagine how they respected the family of Rasulullah, though he is not an immediate member. He is the cousin of Rasulullah. Not, his son or his daughter or his grandson. No, he is cousin of Rasulullah, but because he belongs to Rasulullah, they respected him. Even though he was young. Like the difference between him and Sayyidina Abu Bakr is 48 years. But this is how they respected the family of Rasulullah. And this is one of the things that changed in our time. They respected the family of Rasulullah, and nowadays, look, do we have love to the family of Rasulullah? Not by the tongue, by reality. So, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas replies, he said, no, I come to you because I want to seek knowledge from you. I am the student. So he asked him the question, and then he got what he wants. See how Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud values the ulama, those Sahaba of Rasulullah, the companions of Rasulullah that he learns from. And we will see later at the end of the story, when he himself become one of them, one of these ulama, how people will value him. And one of the examples that shows the respect of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas to the companions of Rasulullah that he learned from, to his teachers, to the ulama, we have plenty of examples. We mentioned one of them with Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu. Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit is 8 years older than him. And he is a scribe. He is one of the people who used to write the wahi, the Quran for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit wanted to mount his horse. Sayyidina Zayd, one of the distinguished ulama of the companions of Rasulullah radiallahu anhu. He wanted to mount his horse. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas came to him and he took the rein of the horse and stood humbly, submissively, like the slave with their masters. When Sayyidina Zayd noticed that, he asked him, why are you doing that? He said, this is how we are taught to respect our scholars. You see the akhlaq, the nobility. Where did he get that from? If he was not taught that when he was young, and he's still young, by the way, how come he behaves like that? So, Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit, when he noticed that respect from him, he said, show me your hand. He showed him his hand, he took his hand and kissed it. And Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas asked him, why you kissed my hand? He said, this is how we are taught to respect the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You see the mutual respect among the companions of Rasulullah regardless of age. These are the manners that they were brought up upon. Are we bringing up our children upon these manners? If the parents don't have these manners, how come they infuse and cultivate and refine the manners of their children? All of us, parents and children, we need to do it together. We need to find those people who have refined manners, who have the ability to refine the manners, to do tarbiyah to others, to guide others to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because not every guided can guide. We need those people who are guided to Allah and have the ability to guide others to Allah, to attach ourselves to them, to be guided to Allah, because everything in our life, we need a teacher to teach us. If you want to learn a language, you need a teacher. If you want to learn how to paint, you need a teacher. If you want to learn how to cook, you need someone to teach you. If you want to learn how to write or how to read, you need someone to teach you. Anything in our life, you want to learn how to drive, you need someone to teach you. If you want to learn Iman, if you want to learn the way to Allah, if you want to learn how to go to Allah at the end of your life to be one of those people that Allah loves and will be granted paradise, you need someone to teach you. Iman is not a birth-given quality that we get upon coming to life. No, not at all. Iman is a quality that we need to strive very hard to obtain. Iman, if you want to be a true mu'min, a true believer, there are qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran and Rasulullah taught us in the Sunnah also. They are not a birth-given quality upon being born to Muslim parents, you become mu'min. No, not at all. If you want to become a dentist, how many years you want to study? School, 11 or 12 years. University, 5 or 6 years. And then training, maybe 4 or more years. It depends from one country to another. So we need almost 20 years to be a dentist, to be a mu'min, to be the person that Allah loves. This is a way greater than a dentist. How long do you need to spend? The companions of Rasulullah understood that. That's why they attached themselves to Rasulullah. They attached their children to Rasulullah. When Rasulullah is no more there, they attached to the people who got the knowledge from Rasulullah. And then generation after generation, they did that. Nowadays, we don't do. That's why we are so different from them. Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas, when Rasulullah left this dunya, he continued searching for every one of the companion of Rasulullah that he has knowledge from Rasulullah that he didn't get. And when Sayyidina Umar became the caliph, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas was 15 years old. Sayyidina Umar made him one of his consultants. And when someone asks him, why you choose him, you put him with us, with the consultants, and he is still young, he says, إِنَّهُ فَتَى الْكُهُولِ لَهُ لِسَانٌ سَؤُولٌ وَقَلْبٌ عَقُولٌ. He is the senior he is the young of the seniors. لَهُ لِسَانٌ سَؤُولٌ. He has a tongue that questions to learn. وَقَلْبٌ عَقُولٌ. And he has heart and mind that understands. 15 years old, he became a consultant of Sayyidina Umar, the Caliph. Imagine the high status, and he was only 15 years old. And there is no difference. 15 or 20 or 30 or 60 or 70 years old, the issue is not age. The issue is Iman, the issue is understanding, the issue is knowledge, the issue is manners, behaviors. So when we take care, we have many examples. We mentioned previously also about Sayyidina Abdullah, Sayyidina Osama bin Zayd. He was almost 17 or 18 years old when he led an army. And we mentioned also Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Next week, inshallah, we'll speak about Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit. All of them were young companions of Rasulullah. If we don't take care of our children, of the young people when they are young, what happens when they become older and they become main figures in the community? I know some people, they were not taught to shoulder responsibility when they are young. Now they become grandparents. Until today, the most important thing to them is food, drink, and fun. They are grandparents. Their children are the same as their grandchildren. And this what will happen. The cycle continues unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends mercy upon them and guides them to change. They were brought up on food and drink and entertainment. They become grandparents, and the most important to them, food and drink and entertainment. But I don't think we are created only for that. Food and drink and rest. These things, Allah created them for us to help us in our main journey, in our traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Food and drink is to make us strong to continue our path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we don't live for food and drink and entertainment. That is not the life of true Muslims. And we have one example about the level that Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas reached when he became one of the ulama, one of the scholars of his time. His student one day came and said to him, people are blocking the streets outside, are congested waiting for you. They want to learn from you. So he took wudu and he said to his student, ask them if any one of them wants to ask about Quran and its recitation and its narration, let them in. His house was filled with people, congested. They asked him questions and he answered them. They kept on asking and asking, and he answered all their questions. And when they ran out of questions, they have no more questions, he gave them extra knowledge. And then he said, give space to your brothers. This is a polite way to ask them to leave, because the streets remains congested. The streets remain congested, filled with people. People are waiting for their turn to come in. So they left. When they left, he asked his student, he said, ask them, anyone who wants to learn about the tafsir of the Quran, exegesis of the Quran, let them in. His house was again filled with people. And they asked him questions about the tafsir of the Quran, and he kept answering them until they ran out of questions. And then he gave them extra knowledge that they didn't ask. And when they finished, he again said, give space to your brothers. The streets are still filled with people. And then he said to his student, ask them, whoever wants to ask about fara'id, the prescribed acts of worship, what is fard, that wajib we have to do in Islam, let them in. So his house again was filled with people and congested. They asked him questions, he answered all their questions, and he gave them extra knowledge. And then he said, give space to your brothers. They left, and he said, whoever wants to ask about Arabic, poetry, history of the Arabs, come. And the house also again was filled with people. And that became almost the norm. Always the streets are blocked. His house was always filled with people. And that was a problem if people want to go walk in the street and the streets are blocked. So he wanted to find a solution. So he make one day for fiqh. Those who want to come for fiqh, they come on that day only. So the streets are not blocked. Another day for maghazi, expeditions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day for poetry. One day for the history of Arabs. One day for Arabic, and so on. Because Arabic and the history of Arabs, we learn the life of Rasulullah and the companions, we learn Islam from them. Arabic language, because without Arabic language, how can we understand the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So he was teaching that. He himself was a university. He was interdisciplinary scholar, not like our scholars nowadays. We want to find one field, go deep in it, and know nothing about other fields. You want to ask about fiqh, about tafsir, about recitation, about narration, about Arabic, about history, interdisciplinary scholars. Because when you are taken care of, you are brought up well, the moment you are born, you will become a successful human being in your life, definitely. This is how we should bring up our children, and how we also bring up ourselves as well. And we mentioned also previously that Rasulullah make dua for him, Allahumma atih al-hikmah, ya Allah grant him wisdom. The books of history narrated also to us many examples of his wisdom and his aphorisms. But we have one example here of one of the aphorisms he used to say. He used to say, Ya sahib al-dhanbi, la ta'man aqibata dhanbik. O sinner, do not feel secure, do not feel safe from the retribution and the consequences of your sin. Because what comes after the sin is graver than the sin itself. Because if you don't feel shy from the two angels on your left and right, who are prescribing every action that you do, you are not shy and they are there, is not less than the sin itself. And you're laughing while you are doing the sin, and you don't know what Allah is gonna do to you, is graver than the sin itself. And your happiness, you feel happy while you grab the sin, because you did the sin, you grabbed it, you steal something, you did something haram, that you got it, I got it, it's haram. You're happy because of that, is graver than the sin. You become happy because you disobey Allah. How come you become happy when you sin? But because we are far away from Allah, our relation with Allah is almost severed. I ask Allah not to sever, not to cut our relation with Him. Because if the relation with Allah is cut, that is a disaster. But we are far away, disattached from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't feel that. So, if we sin and we become happy, he said, if you become happy because you get the sin, that is graver than the sin. And if you become sad because you missed the sin, that is graver than the sin. And if you are worried that the sin that you do in private is revealed to others, while you don't care because it is already revealed to Allah, this is greater than the sin itself. And he says, O sinner, don't you know what was the reason that Allah tested the Prophet Ayyub alayhi salam for? Prophet Ayyub in the Bible, his name is Job. He says, do you know why Allah tested him, Prophet Ayyub? He lost his children, alayhi salam. He lost all his children. Even his wife left him. He lost his health. He was so sick. He lost his wealth. He was rich. He got nothing. He said, the reason that Allah tested Prophet Ayyub with that is because a needy, a miskeen, asked his help, but he didn't help. He did not do wrong to anyone. Someone asked for help, but he didn't help. And of course, prophets did not refrain from helping others without a reason. Definitely, that's not the manners and the akhlaq of Anbiya. Prophets, they have their reasons. But he says, because he failed to help a needy person, Allah tested him with that. Now, we accumulate sin after a sin after a sin, and then we think that we are going to go to Jannah direct. Who said that to you? Is there any ayah and hadith that says that? We sin daily, moment after moment, continuously make sins without repenting to Allah, and you think we're going to go to Jannah? How come we think like that? We should not be fooled about that. Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas was not the person who advised others without himself following his advice. That's why Abdullah bin Mulaika said, one day we were traveling from Mecca to Medina. And of course, in best cases, they were mounting a camel, some 400 kilometers on a camel, they will be exhausted. Now, if we travel for 400 kilometers in car or by airplane with aircon and very comfortable chairs and so on, we are very tired. What happens when they are traveling on a horse? They are very tired. He said, Abdullah bin Abbas said, all the people sleeps all the night out of fatigue, very tired. But Abdullah bin Mas'ud spent half of the night standing up in Qiyamul Layl, praying with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Despite the fatigue that they got because they were traveling, he spent half of his night standing up with Allah, because those people who are attached to Allah, their rest is with Allah. How to learn that? You need some people who are attached to Allah, to attach yourself to them, to accompany them, to be like them. We need to find those people for ourselves and for our family, because this is responsibility that we will be asked about. Once we live this life, we will be asked about. And also, Abdullah bin Mulaika also said, one night I noticed that all the night Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas was reciting one ayah, repeating it and crying, repeating it and crying until Fajr, until dawn. And the ayah was, وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. The intoxications, the agonies of death come with truth, or bring the truth. Because people who deny the truth, deny the akhirah, deny meeting Allah, forget about meeting Allah, forget about hell, forget about the retribution, forget about the punishment of Allah. When death comes, they are no more given the choice. In this dunya, we are granted choice. Do whatever you want. But when death comes, the truth comes with it. You see that you are going to Allah. You see that dunya is stopped for you. You are no more there. So the agonies, the intoxications of death brings the truth, comes together with the truth. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. This, what you were trying to avoid. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas, deep in his heart, every cell in him understands and realizes the meaning of that moment, when we will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will be questioned. That's why he repeats and cries. And he was known of 2 marks on his cheeks, because he cries a lot, and the tears that drops made 2 marks on his cheeks, fearing the day when he will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we forget about that day, we forget about Allah, we forget about hell, and we just live for life. That's not the life of mu'min. That's not the life of true Muslim. Not at all. Because that's not the life that Rasulullah lived and asked us to live. That's not the life that Rasulullah taught his companions, and his companions taught the generation after them. We are far away. That's why they became the best ummah, and we are not. We are far away from that teachings. We even do not take care of learning that teachings, to live that teachings and implement the teachings in our life. And what happens, we have an example of the result and the status and the level that Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas reached. We saw how Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas, when he was a student, how he was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then how he was with the companions after Rasulullah. He came outside their door waiting for them. He didn't even knock the door. How he respected Sayyidina Zayd bin Thabit. These are just some examples, but if you read about his life, plenty of examples there. Now when he became a scholar himself, let's see what happens. We saw also how people are congested outside his door. He was himself a university. Now we have another example. He lived for 71 years. When Rasulullah ﷺ departed this dunya, he was 13. That means he lived after Rasulullah for 58 years. In the time of Muawiyah, when Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan anhu was the caliph, the distinguishing feature of his period was that Islam spread on earth, was widespread. And Islam was widespread, and the Islamic Caliphate was the main power on earth at that time, and spreading love, and people are coming to Islam, the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people become Muslim. Imagine how many people will be around that caliph. And Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan was a generous person. He was the caliph and he was generous, so people like to be among those people who give. And he is going to Hajj, and people find it a chance for them to go to Hajj. When they go with the caliph, of course, they have no cost to pay. Imagine how many people with him. The entourage with him, a lot of people. But on their way, they noticed another group bigger than the group of the caliph. And they were shocked. Who might be that group bigger than the group of the caliph himself? When they asked, they found that Sayyidina Abdullah Bin Abbas was going to Hajj, and those are the people who went with him to learn from him, to seek knowledge from him, to seek the blessings of Hajj with him, and to learn Hajj from him also. Those people, they were gathering around the ulama who guide them to Allah. But nowadays, we gather around people who have money. We gather around people who are famous. We gather around people who have power. We gather for transient worldly gain. But they were around people who will guide them to Allah, who will get again in this life and in the akhirah also. They were attaching themselves to the people who guide them to Allah. This is a major difference. Nowadays, we neglect those people. That's why they become rare. That's why they become weak. That's why we are lagging behind. Look at the manners of Muslims. They are cheating, envying each other. Muslims are cheating each other, envy each other. There is no love among Muslims. When we have love, it is just by the tongue, not actual tongue. Muslims are suing each other in the courts. Prisons are filled with people who do crimes, Muslims among Muslims. Do you think these are the manners that Rasulullah taught us? This is the way of life that Allah wants us to live? That's why we are no more the best ummah. We don't care about those people who have these manners and who teach us these manners to attach ourselves to them, to guide us to Allah. We just care about food and drink and money and dunya only. Then that's why we are deteriorating. We are not living the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to live and Rasulullah wants us to live. Those people are the actual stars that gives light to us on our way to Allah. But now we change. We call other people stars. Those people, I don't know where they guide us to. But definitely the stars that we call them stars, they don't guide to Allah. They guide somewhere else. But those people who guide to Allah, look at YouTube, for example, now. The ulama, the sincere ulama that care for the ummah, that care about people to guide them to Allah, look at their followers and views. And look at others who misguide people, who guide them to everything but Allah. You will find millions of viewers, millions of subscribers. Even when the video comes up, just 2 hours, 3 hours, immediately. And you find videos 5 years for very great, distinguished, sincere ulama, barely reaches 1,000 viewers. We are not caring. We don't want. And then we ask why our life is so difficult. Because of us. We are not living the life that Allah wants us to live, to be happy in this dunya and in the akhirah. That's why our life becomes difficult. We should not ask why our life is difficult, because we are not following that way. Intuitive. Very intuitive. With that, we come to the end of the story, but before we finish the episode, this is a call deep from a disheartened heart. We need to go back to the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to embark on, to be guided to Him. The way that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, taught the companions, and the companions taught the people after them, generation after generation. If we want to be close to Allah, if we want our end and final destination, Jannah, we need to go back. But how come you embark on the way that misguides you to Allah, takes you away from Allah, and you assume at the end that you will reach Allah? How come? We embark on the ways that guide us to hell, and we think at the end we reach Jannah? We neglect our children. We just care about food and drink, and we neglect their mentality, we neglect their hearts, we neglect their manners, we neglect their behaviors, we neglect to refine them, and we assume at the end to be okay, to be good, to be like the companions of Rasulullah. How come? How come? This is an example, an actual example. Those great people, the companions of Rasulullah, the people of the best generation that Allah created ever on earth, this is the reason why they become the best ummah. Since they were young, the moment he was born, his mother sent him to Rasulullah. Are we planning for our children the moment they are born or before that? In fact, we should plan for them before that. Planning for the generation starts with choosing the parents. The husband, when he chooses the wife, and the wife, when she chooses the husband, this is how we plan for our children. If a husband chooses a wife just because she is beautiful and she doesn't care about Allah, what do you think that the children she will produce will be? And if the wife cares about the husband who has money, but he doesn't care about being close to Allah or Rasulullah, what do you think that the children he will produce? Are they going to be close to Allah? Unless a mercy from Allah comes to them, but I'm speaking about the norm. So we need to go back to the way that Rasulullah taught us, the way that Allah wants us to be, because being close with these people, this is the way that Allah bring us to Him. Allah did not send us Quran and say, go and read and come to me. No. The first thing that Allah did when He wanted to guide us, send us Rasulullah. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed to guide human beings, He sent a prophet to them, someone to guide them, to teach them. Then the teachings come. Rasulullah comes first, then the teaching. Sayyidina Isa comes first, then the teaching. Sayyidina Musa comes first, then the teaching. All prophets, the persons that become the qudwah, that guides to Allah first. So we need to attach ourselves with those people. This is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided us to Him. The way that we will reach Allah by is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to reach Him by. With that, we come to the end of the episode today. I meet you again, inshallah, in a new episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا. رواه Muslim. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, said, anyone who calls to guidance will have a reward equal to the reward of those who adhere to it, without their reward being diminished in any respect. Narrated by Muslim. If you think there is guidance in this video, share it and call others to it.